Donald Trump was more humiliated today than I think he has ever been in any other moment during his political career. Forget the Access Hollywood tape. Forget all the details about Stormy Daniels, because I think deep down, Donald Trump would love everyone to think he's some Casanova. But this one today struck him right at his perceived strength. He wants everyone to think that Donald Trump is in charge and he's the strong man and only I can fix it. And today made him look pathetic. And that is how Vladimir Putin treated him during his phone call today. So today was supposed to be Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin's long-awaited phone call where they were going to discuss the Ukraine war. And Donald Trump, in a show of might, has a great relationship with Putin and he's going to get the war solved during his conversation. Obviously, that didn't happen. But it was what happened before the call that really matters. Vladimir Putin made Donald Trump wait. And not just wait, but completely humiliated him in front of the entire world. So a video comes out showing Vladimir Putin on stage somewhere talking to a bunch of Russian oligarchs. And the host turns to him and says, "Shouldn't you be talking to Donald Trump? Aren't you going to be late?" And Vladimir Putin turns and goes, Ugh. I don't think I have ever seen in my entire life the head of state of a country humiliate the American president like that moment. Vladimir Putin sent a message to the entire world that Donald Trump meant absolutely nothing to him. And for good reason. What the hell does Russia have to fear about America? Donald Trump has been the most useful idiot to Vladimir Putin since the second he became president the first time in 2017. But today, I got to talk to the governor of Illinois, J.B. Pritzker. And I asked him, if you could tell Donald Trump anything today, right to his face, what would you tell him? And his answer was, what does Vladimir Putin have on Donald Trump? I think that's a question we all have. It seems like when it comes to Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump, there are things that we can't prove, but everyone knows. And what we know is that Donald Trump acts like a Russian asset. A great question to ask is, if Donald Trump was a Russian asset, how would he act any differently than how he's acting now? And the answer is he wouldn't. Literally every single thing Donald Trump has done as president in some way held water to Vladimir Putin or benefited Putin. I can give you a list as long as my arm. Just look at the way Donald Trump speaks about NATO. That's one of the big ones. Vladimir Putin hates NATO. There is nothing Vladimir Putin wants more than for NATO to crumble. NATO is a military alliance of all of the European allies and the United States. The military might of NATO is a direct threat to Vladimir Putin. He wants NATO to crumble. And what does Donald Trump do? Donald Trump has done everything in his power to make NATO weaker. By maligning the other members of NATO, demanding that they pay more or fend for themselves. It's all Putin propaganda bullshit. Then there's foreign aid. Everything Donald Trump is doing as it relates to other countries benefits Vladimir Putin. By pulling out of these regions, he is creating a vacuum for places like China and Russia to take the United States' place. That can only have long-lasting damage to our interests around the world. There's an old saying with foreign aid that it comes in three forms: bullets, bribes, and blankets. And the idea of foreign aid is to create relationships with other countries. It's to create, in some ways, a dependence on America as friend and ally. And that they'll always know they could rely on America. All that is out the window. I heard one case from a member of Greek parliament who said that there was some program in a college that the United States was funding. And it wasn't a woke program. It was some nonpartisan international relations course, I think. And America did that once a long time ago. They funded classes in other colleges. It was reciprocity where foreign students would come here. And this member of the Greek parliament said that the day after Donald Trump pulled funding for this program, a university in Beijing reached out to the college and said, oh, we'll fund it. That's how quick China and Russia are sitting in the sidelines pouncing when at the very moment the United States backs off their international commitments. And we've seen it. We've all saw the pictures of when Donald Trump pulled out of Syria and you see Putin taking over the military base. It's not, we've been around this rodeo enough that now we know Donald Trump's MO. You can almost ask yourself, does this help Vladimir Putin? The answer is yes. Oh, that's what Donald Trump is going to do. So we might not know for sure if Donald Trump is a Russian asset, but damn, does he act like one. So let's talk about, very briefly, Donald Trump's history. Because there are times in Donald Trump's life where you could look and starts to provide some clarity. We know that the KGB, apparently, from a former member, said that he had a code name, Krasnov. If anything, Russia has been trying to make Donald Trump an asset since the 80s. We know that Donald Trump went to Moscow in the 80s. And we know that former KGB members said that that trip was the culmination of a Russian program to try to gain influence by inviting American celebrities and people who are famous into Moscow to try to get them to become either witting or unwitting assets. And of course, Donald Trump, thinking about dollar signs and, oh, can I open up a Trump Tower in Moscow, went to go figure out how much money he could make. God knows what they told him, what he left with. But we know that very strangely, 2 months later, Donald Trump takes a $100,000 ad out in a paper where, guess what? He starts talking shit about NATO, calling on all the countries in NATO to pay more or that they should fend for themselves if they don't. The same Putin playbook that he reads from now. 2 months after he came back from Moscow in 1980s. All this is provable. We've posted about it before. So to go back to Governor Pritzker's question, what does Vladimir Putin have on Donald Trump? That's something I want to know. Because Donald Trump is acting like a Russian asset. If I could be alone in a room with Donald Trump and ask him 5 questions, question 1 would be, what does Putin have on you? Why is everything you do benefit Vladimir Putin? There's got to be some reason. Either he's afraid of him, either there's compromise. We already heard about the PP tape. There might be something there. I've looked into it. I know that there's not a lot of Russian connections to at least some of his early loans in the 80s. Maybe there's some financial ties. We know that a Russian oligarch bought his house in Florida for like 2 times its value. These are all definitive stuff that we know about. What don't we know about? So yeah, I'd like to ask Donald Trump those questions. But lately we're hearing, what can I do? What can I do? You know, that's the question of the day. What can I do? What can our leaders do? I'll tell you what you can do. Call the White House switchboard and ask them, what does Vladimir Putin have on Donald Trump? I would love it. If 50 million people called the White House tomorrow and asked them, what does Vladimir Putin have on Donald Trump? Why is Donald Trump holding Vladimir Putin's water literally every single time he does anything when it comes to foreign countries? Why does he punish our allies and coddle dictators. Why don't you call your senator and ask them? We have seen such spineless behavior from the Senate. People like Lindsey Graham, someone who has experience in foreign policy, who you might disagree with him on everything, used to have like a little tiny bit of integrity back when John McCain was around, and you might not agree with him, but you knew he was doing what he felt was right. That is long gone. Lindsey Graham does what Donald Trump tells him to do. Marco Rubio does what Donald Trump tells him to do. And it's scary because that's what Putin wants. So that means, by definition, Lindsey Graham and Marco Rubio are also unwitting Russian assets because they're defending Donald Trump's policies, and they go to bat for him and they defend him, even though both of those people warned us about Donald Trump. Lindsey Graham said that the Republican Party would be destroyed, and they deserve it if they nominated Donald Trump as nominee in 2016. Marco Rubio has warned us about Donald Trump, saying that he had strongman tactics. Marco Rubio, love him or hate him, also was someone who operated with foreign policy with what I call integrity, which means believing in what they say. You might disagree with it, but there was a basis. He thought it was right. He might be wrong, but that's what he thought, and he was sticking to his guns. Now that is all out the window. They do what Donald Trump says. Marco Rubio sinking in the couch like an accordion, like a Raggedy Ann doll, because he knew that he was selling his integrity just to be able to call himself Secretary of State. I will never understand that, but it's the way it is. So what does Donald Trump plan on doing? Ask yourself what Putin wants him to do. I've never been more embarrassed today than to see Putin completely and utterly humiliate the President of the United States. Because love or hate Trump, disagree with him on everything, he represents America to the world as a head of state. That's one of the most painful things about this. It's not just I got to disagree with the guy. He represents America. I'm very grateful that a lot of well-thinking, good-hearted people understand that the American people aren't 100% to blame for the predicament we're in. But Donald Trump is the head of state, and today the Russian president completely humiliated him. And of course he's going to let it happen, and of course hold the water for Putin and do exactly what Putin wants. So I'm going to leave today asking you a question. And that question is, when you look at what's happening in the world, will you say to yourself, why does this benefit Putin? Because if enough people are asking that question, then maybe we could have some influence on this issue. Maybe we could start pressuring the media to ask this question. The next time Donald Trump does something really stupid on an international scale that benefits Putin, ask him that question. What the fuck does Putin have on you? And why are you doing this thing that hurts America and helps Russia? I don't know if we'll ever get an answer, but there's not enough people asking that question.